Welcome to another episode of Rose Resource Room. Today I'm here with Mark Hancock, the CEO of TrailLife, and I'm going to ask him some questions to get us all familiar with what life was before he became the CEO of TrailLife. Welcome to the show, Mr. Hancock.
Thanks, Ro. It's great to be here.
My pleasure. So, can you tell me a little bit about what life was like? Do you have any experience with homeschooling, whether it's homeschooling families through TrailLife or your own experience? What was that like?
Yeah, I'd love to talk about that. My wife and I have two boys, Luke and Logan, and they're both homeschooled, classically educated for the most part. And they both got full ride academic scholarships. So homeschooling works. So you parents hang in there. It's going to be okay. And it was a really neat opportunity because I ran my businesses out of the house and my wife worked out of the house. We were just around our boys a lot. And it was just a beautiful thing. Made a lot of sense for us to homeschool them and the amount of time that we got to pour into their lives was just, I mean, this now they're both married and out of the house, and I have no regrets at all about the time that I got to spend with my sons. But for a couple of years, my wife was running a crisis pregnancy center, so she was going outside the house. So I was primary on with the boys when it was just the perfect time for them. They were like 10, 12 years old to get dad all day, to being primary on the homeschooling. So I really am so thankful for that time that I had with my sons and how my wife and I got to invest in their really as much of their character as in their education. As you know, homeschooling isn't all about the academics. There's a lot more important stuff than that going on. So it was an amazing experience for us. I wouldn't trade it for anything.
We can actually end the show right now because I feel like you touched on everything that we need to touch on. Like honestly speaking, a lot of the fears that homeschooling families have right now is this working, right? So like when you
Oh my
plant a seed,
gosh.
you can't pull it up and say, is it working? Is it growing? You just literally have to wait and see and trust the process.
Yeah.
So just the encouragement and reassurance that you gave has been so helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, it is we did God gave us two really smart boys, and we just hit it every year. We would pray about how are we going to do our like a lot of homeschooling parents, how are we going to approach it this year? What curriculum are we use? What do we use? And he was just really faithful, put the right things in our hand. We did classical conversations for a couple of years. My oldest son actually was a philosophy major at Liberty, which I mean, you can't go out and open a philosophy store, but he was able to go out and he taught at a classical academy for a couple of years. And it was really cool because he was the first classically educated teacher that they had. So they had a lot of teachers that they retrained to teach the classical model, but he was actually raised classically and got to teach a classical education. So um, that environment of praying about what are our boys going to need, and to understand that that son in particular needed that classical education because his philosophical about back in the way he thought about things, his critical thinking. So there's lots of reading, lots of big books, lots of classics in there. He's a lot smarter than I am. But so you really get to cater it to what your kids are. And who knows your kids better than you. And so the value of being able to say, what does my son really need? And also kind of setting aside, I realize you're not asking these questions, but I'm going to go there. Setting aside this, I speak at a lot of homeschool conventions. About 60% of our members in Trail Life USA are homeschool boys. So we're around a lot of homeschool parents. And homeschool moms are amazing, you know. But I have seen, and my own wife, my wife can tell me this, that the women that homeschool moms are can sometimes really stress out over the academic piece, because our school experience was learning, 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 and but we picked up a lot of character stuff from there too. And so I would just say to parents, man, you know, the most powerful thing you can do is be there. Just be present as your kids are growing up. The academics, you know, certainly you got to pay attention to that because other people do, and you do have a responsibility. Your kids should read by the time they get out of your house, those sorts of things. But just to really understand the strengths that you have in your son or your daughter and cater that education to them. And it's just a beautiful thing. They will learn. They want to learn. And if you put the right stuff in front of them and deliver it in the right way, they'll just gobble it up. So the academic part, I don't want to say well, it is secondary to the character development, and you got to make good decisions about it. But don't stress over the academics. You know, the amount of time that you're giving your kids and the way you're shaping your character, living your life in front of them, that's the most powerful thing you're doing.
And thank you for sharing that because you have reiterated the importance of not making academics the thing. And I really just wanted to hone in on that because there's so much to unpack. Like, if you're a parent who pulled your kids out of school, but you're doing school at home, all you did was change the physical location, right? So
Mhm.
I think the real point is what you're talking about in terms of character development. A lot of things, I think they say it's caught, not taught, right? So we may open a book and flip through the pages, but what we're modeling, the examples we're showing at home, those are the ones that are really carrying on. So, like you said, ideally the kids should be able to read at some point in their life, right? And it is important. Penmanship is an important skill. All those things matter. You want your child to be able to spell, but at the end of the day, and I'm talking for myself, like I just had this conversation yesterday, and I remember I would meet homeschool parents and we would talk for a couple minutes, and my first question would be, so what curriculum do you use? And that's
Mhm.
really not what it's about because kids are individuals and you can adapt things, right? Like you could literally put together your own curriculum. But my whole point is it's not about the curriculum. And I learned that later. I learned that I was also being homeschooled and this was also character training for me through God and
Yeah.
God was exposing my flaws and showing me what I needed to work on. But I really appreciate you reminding us that it's not just about the academics. That literally is secondary. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and it isn't like there's a curriculum. You know, at these homeschool events, I'm really looking forward to being at CHAP. You know, there's so much there.
Yeah,
You know, and when we were raising our sons in homeschooling, there wasn't quite all the choices that we have now, but somehow we managed, even with fewer choices.
that's right.
But the key was it wasn't like, okay, this is the best one, or this is the
Hmm.
hot one, or this is what everyone is using. It's more like, what does my child need?
Hmm.
And and what will they enjoy? Because learning is this incredibly I mean, we all love to learn when it's the way we want to learn.
Exactly.
And I have friends who will listen to podcasts, and that's the way they get all their stuff. And other people who want to read, other people get it through social media, whatever. And we all kind of choose the way that we most engage with that learning process. So to recognize that for our kids. Now, I would tell a story about when we first started homeschooling. Our school had a surplus sale, and we went and we bought two old student desks, and I sanded them down and painted them and varnished them because we were going to do school, and we knew how to do school because we had both done school. But we were doing, like you said, we were doing school at home.
At home.
Those boys never sat at those desks, thankfully. They were beautiful. I mean, they were
Right.
pristine by the time I was done. But we hung, put clothes on them or
That's
whatever.
right.
And but they learned, hanging upside down on the sofa with the dog on their head or what. I mean, you really learn to, particularly with boys, and of course we specialize in boys and trail life, but you really learn how's your son or daughter going to read the best. My wife would just take them to the park and they would learn in the park and
Right.
just bring their stuff with them, whatever it is, whether they're reading, whatever, go set up a hammock somewhere or the library, how much time we spent in the library to make the library a
Yeah.
place that they fell in love with. I'll tell you what, the number one thing that we did for our sons, this is a secret, we don't tell everybody this, is my boys were allowed to stay up as late as they wanted to, as long as they were reading.
That's right.
And my older son, the philosophy major, he was automatically a reader. Before he could walk, you could put a pile of books and a pile of toys. He would crawl over to the pile of books, sit himself up and start flipping through and looking at
I
pictures.
love
He
that.
loved to read. So his younger brother was 2 years behind. They shared a bedroom all their lives. Um, the younger one wanted to stay up as late as his older one, the older boy. So he became a reader. It turned him into a
Mhm.
reader. And there are kings of the playground because when you get together at the playground and say, "Hey, I get to stay up as late as I want," like, dang, you've got the best parents in the world.
Right.
Um, but
That's an incentive. Yeah.
absolutely. But they'd fall asleep with a book on their face or whatever. It's not like they're being deprived of sleep. They will get what
Right.
it is that they need.
Absolutely.
But that turned them both into readers. And the other rule, and I'm still paying for this, is both boys, I told them, I will always buy you a book. And so no matter where we were, say, I really want this book. And it wasn't a question of the price or anything. You kind of make that commitment. I'm going to
That's
spend
right.
a lot of money here, but I'm teaching something. There's a
Oh, it's an
reason.
investment.
It's an investment, but it's also letting him know how much I value it. And your kids will adopt your values in interesting ways. And they, to some degree, until their brains are fully developed, they are barring your evaluation of who it is that they are. You're still the most important voice in the life of your child. And so by saying to my sons, uh, that I will always buy you a book, what I'm really saying to them is, I think that you're important enough to have in front of you everything that you need to be
Wow.
successful. And I really, really care about you. And there's very few ways that I will communicate that I care about you with money other than
Mm,
buy you a book. Because you can spoil a kid and say, I'll buy you anything. And
that's
that's how
right.
each other. But
That's
if you
right.
say, I will always buy you a book, that's saying different. That's saying I'm investing in you because I believe that this will make you better. I'm not investing
Mm,
in another video game for you, another Lego
that's
robotics
right.
thing, whatever. I'm investing in something that's going to make you, although I'll do those things, but I will always buy you a book. And I think that those two decisions, stay up late as long as reading, always buy your book, turn both my boys into readers, which just makes them great, easy to teach, and just great students. They're still both students,
Awesome.
and I still
Yeah.
get every once in a while, hey Dad, can you buy me this book? And now they're in their 20s and married. It's like, come on, this is like a time limit on this thing.
They're like, well, you said always, and I'm still here.
I
So come
know,
on,
I
Dad.
know, I know.
They're
They
cashing
both
in.
Yeah, they were both they're both wordsmiths, so they will call out the word always and tell me what it means.
Oh,
So,
I love that. And that sounds like something from CC too. You talked about classical education, and what I understand classical education to be is giving kids the tools they need to learn. Because honestly, like my boys are 2, 8, and 10. I'm probably raising them for jobs that don't even exist yet.
yeah.
So can you talk a little bit about why you thought classical education was so important?
Yeah, for exactly what it is that you're saying, because and things are just changing so rapidly. And I think that our educational system over the last couple of generation has produced people who don't really know how to think. They know how to give you the answers that you've asked for.
Mhm.
And later on, as our boys moved into high school, we put them in a more traditional environment. It was a classical academy, but it wasn't strictly classical.
Okay.
They didn't really get the classical model. They had the classical books and things like that, but the classrooms were run like almost traditionally, where they had a teacher at the front of the room. And it was good for them before they went off to college to have that experience, because we got to talk with them about checkbox teachers. And a
Mm,
checkbox teacher is the one who says, just give me back what it is that I said to you. Just check the box.
that's right. Bare minimum,
But
regurgitate.
yeah, but my boys were raised to ask questions. Um, even some parents would look at us and say, is your son talking back to you? Because I would say, hey, I need you to do this. And sometimes when they were allowed to say, can I ask why? And sometimes I would say, no, this you need to take out the garbage.
Right.
But I need you to do
That's
this.
not negotiable.
And they would say, can I ask why? And we would say, yeah, because I want you to understand the process, but my thinking behind it, or there's something more valuable in here. And that actually it creates a kind of dialogue that I still have with my sons. So that's sort of the classical environment that encouraging the asking why. And so my boys, when they got into that when they would have a checkbox teacher, like I said, there's 2 years difference. So my older son would tell me, say, yeah, you're gonna have that teacher. He's a checkbox teacher, or she's a teacher. And they would prefer a teacher who gave them an essay test, than a checkbox, because they want to explain their thinking behind it, and they want you to know that they fully understand the subject, and they didn't feel like they could communicate that by answering A, B, C, or D.
That's right.
Um, so I think that the classical education, I think we chose that because it does encourage like the kind of thinking, and which is why Orwell's being a philosophy major, um, always asking why. Um, And so that's there. I think there's some value in that, particularly in an environment like I said, it's raising people who, all right, tell me what you want me to do, and
Mm,
how you want me to do it. And it doesn't bring that kind of joy to a process of adding something.
right.
People are motivated. It's interesting. More than money, people are motivated by three things: autonomy, mastery, and purpose. And so, if you can provide those things for your child in education, autonomy, meaning that he kind of gets to make his own decisions. Our boys, we didn't structure their day for them, but they couldn't go do something fun, although their learning was fun. They couldn't do something that they wanted to do until they did the stuff they had to do. But
Right.
they had autonomy. So one boy would get up early in the morning and knock it out, and he'd be done. And he'd have the whole day. The other one liked to sleep in, take his time and get through it. And she just kind of took, he wasn't in any hurry to do anything. So they had
Right.
their autonomy. They could set their own schedule. Mastery, which allowed them to learn the thing as deeply as they wanted to, which is what a classical education will give you. If somebody's teaching you history and they say, here's what you need to remember, here's what's going to be on the test. And that's always the question. Well, what's going to be on the test? This date, this person's name, how many people sailed on this ship or whatever. And so they're just learning that. They're just memorizing that. The mastery says, I really want to understand what was in the captain's heart as they faced that battle and what was going on midship and why were people on the ship in the first place and what were they fighting for? And there's a lot more life in that kind of learning that asks those questions. So it's autonomy, mastery, and purpose. The purpose thing is, and that's where the why question comes from. You want me to do this? Can I ask why? Because boys in particular will engage themselves more if there is some sort of purpose behind it, if they understand the why behind it, which is why um, participation trophies and games where they don't keep score is so bad for boys because it's not like, why? Why? Why run back and forth up and down the soccer field and sweat and run faster than another one if we're all going to get the same trophy? And uh, boys in particular need to understand purpose. If you work really hard at this, this will happen. Or I'm asking you to do this. Can I ask why? Yes, I'm asking you to do this because of this. Oh, I get it. And now they're engaged in it because they understand the why. So there's different ways that you can accomplish that sort of classical mindset, particularly in boys. But autonomy, mastery, and purpose are huge for boys. Also, boys are big on they have to know who's in charge, who's with me, and what is our mission. And I'm going to be talking about some of these things at CHAP at my Let Boys Be Boys workshop, how it is that we engage boys and bring them to life around these. I realize I've given you much more than you asked for, so I'll stop now.
No, 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 that's very good. And the tone that I'm hearing is that you really think that there's a difference between boys and girls, and I couldn't agree with you more, but I'm gonna leave that right there. So please continue telling me, tell me about your talks at CHAP. Let boys
Yeah,
be
well,
boys.
yeah, Let Boys Be Boys, which is three
Mhm.
winning strategies for leaders of boys. And, we've had over 100,000 men come through TrailLife USA. Now we have 65,000 members in TrailLife USA
Wow.
and 1,300 troops all across the country. For those who don't know about TrailLife USA, think of Boy Scouts only Christ-centered and boy-focused. And so we believe that the word of God is essential in growing godly boys and good focused and winning men. And we also believe that boys are different than girls and that boys need their own environment in order to grow. So
Right.
we're a robust awards program, uniforms, hiking, camping, all those things that you can expect. But we learned a lot about boys. And I wrote Let Boys Be Boys for leaders of boys in any fashion. So if you got a soccer team, if you have a Sunday school, if you have a homeschool co-op, if you have a boy living in your house, you're leading that boy. And so these are three strategies that I provide for parents, coaches, teachers, whatever that we've learned about boys to excel. And the other talk I'm going to be doing, I think I'm talking with the parents about the superpowers of an engaged parent. And
Mm,
that is really around the idea or the sense that God has equipped us with everything that we need to raise our children, but there are some superpowers that maybe just need to be drawn out. A lot of times I know men in particular are brought to conferences and told all the things they're doing wrong. and
Mm.
even subtly. Like if the guy gets up on stage who's a former NFL quarterback and he's telling you how much he reads his Bible and how he dates his wife twice a week and how he does family devotions and how he plays the guitar and how he does, and you're sitting there like, geez, I
I
got
don't do
none of
that.
that going on. But and so that's like a subtle shaming, like, gosh,
Oh,
if I could only be him, I could be a good dad.
mm.
So what I'm talking about is these superpowers, things that we already have that make us really fit. We are still the most influential voice in the life of children. To remind parents of that and the superpowers that they have, and one of them we've hit on, just showing up, just
Right.
being present, knowing how to be present with your kids. So I'll be talking about there's 7 superpowers. I'll likely get through 3. That's the most I can do in that time. But I'll get through the 3 most valuable superpowers. And I love superpowers because um, it's not really, when you think about the superheroes, these aren't skills or things that they developed that they worked really hard at. They had them already.
That's right.
So that's what I want to draw out these superpowers that parents already have that they can just begin to utilize.
I really love that. And it brings us back to the original conversation about it's not all about academics, right? It's not all about curriculum. These are things that are ingrained in you. So whether it's motivation or whether it's leadership or whether it's your ability to engage and be present, right? That's what matters, not the right
Yeah.
book or the right course or the right class or the right co-op. So again, thank you for sharing that. All right, so the Trailman Oath. On my honor, I will do my best to serve God and my country, to respect authority, to be a good steward of creation, and to treat others as I want to be treated. Tell me more about your involvement with Trail Life. How did you get there? How did it start? And how's it going?
Yeah, well, Trail of USA started in January 1st, 2014 was our launch date. But in 2013, it was clear that the Boy Scouts were abandoning some of the more traditional values. And we knew that churches were no longer going to be able to engage with Boy Scouts,
Mm,
because really, Alliance Defending Freedom has told us that it could threaten their 501c3 status. Because if you are aligned with an organization that you give permission to meet in your building, and they have different values than you do, you're not consistently exercising your values, and that inconsistency can weaken your 501. So in other words, you could say to a church, "What do you believe about marriage?" A church would say, "Well, it's one man, one woman, biological sex." And but they could say, but you've got this group meeting in your basement on Tuesday nights that has all sorts of shapes and sizes of genders in there, and you contract with them officially, so you don't really believe that, do you? And that can threaten their 501c3. So we knew that was going to be happening as the Boy Scouts began this drift, and about 300 volunteers across the country started talking about what would it look like to form. What if we had Boy Scouts do all over again with absolutely Christ-centered focus? People don't know Boy Scouts started as a Christian organization, but it was also in a Christian culture, and they didn't realize how they needed to set themselves up to resist a cult, a social justice culture that would weaken their stance. And so we started over. About 50 of us gathered in Louisville, Kentucky in June of 2013. And then 6 months later, we launched. 68 days later, after the first week meeting in Nashville, in Louisville, Kentucky, we had a convention. In Nashville, we had 1,100 men and 100 women come from 44 states to show up 68 days later for our inaugural convention, where we launched the idea of it. Governor Mike Huckabee spoke there. Michael Ferris, you'd be familiar with, the former head of HSLDA. He spoke there. And then 3 months later, we launched. And like I said, since then, we've grown to now we're in over 1,350 churches in all 50 states, 65,000 members participating right now. So it's been quite a journey, and the Boy Scouts just continues to go down this path. Now that's not even their name anymore. They've taken boy out of their name. That's how far they've gone in kind of distancing themselves from the boy business. Now it's boys and girls, and Scouting America is what they call themselves. But at their height, there are 7 million members. Now they're under 1 million. because they've gone down this path. It's really sad to see this wonderful. My older son was an Eagle Scout, so um, it's really sad to see the direction that they've taken. But it's created this beautiful Christ-centered, unapologetically Christian organization called Trail Life USA. That's just continuing to grow.
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I knew about the amazing work Trail Life was doing. What I didn't realize was that this was in response to the gap that was happening or the mission drift, if you will. And while it's sad that it went from seven to one, I think I find hope and even joy in the fact that six, did you say million? 6 million people realize I can no longer be a part of this.
Yeah.
That that gives me actually joy.
That is an interesting thing because uh, but although a lot of people left and didn't come find us, obviously,
Yeah,
but there is something in them that says this isn't the organization that my
that's
grandfather was
right.
part of or my father was part of.
That's
And
right.
we have generations of Eagle Scouts in Trail Life who our highest award is the Freedom Award, which is amazing. If you ever see a boy who is a Freedom Rangeman, he's got their Freedom Award. That's quite a young man. Um, uh, it's harder to get an Eagle. One of the things they do is they write a life ambition essay, and I read every single one of them. And I haven't read one yet that was written by a boy who was younger than 17 years old. It
Oh,
takes a while to really get this to get the Freedom Award. My son got his Eagle when he was 13, and then after Trail Life started, he transferred to Trail Life and got his Freedom Award. Um, but it's not easy, and the quality and the character of young men that are being produced through Trail Life is something. But to have these generations of Eagle Scouts come to us and say, "Man, you don't know what a legacy I'm leaving behind, great grandfather, grandfather, all the way down the line," and it's really tragic. It's really sad that that happened. And a lot of people think that they were forced to make those decisions, but they weren't. They made them willingly because they just wanted to be part. They wanted to sit at the cool kids table or whatever it was.
right.
They gave up willingly the stance that they had. And
Yeah.
so the oath that you see behind me was developed early on. So our boys and men trailmen, um, they do our salute and they say at the beginning of every meeting, and they commit to live according to that oath. We also have a Christian worldview essentials, seven essentials of a Christian worldview. And
Nice.
um, so like I said, we're not we're not just an outdoor organization having a Christian experience. We are at our core a Christian ministry that uses the outdoors to grow boys into godly men.
I love it.
And our churches, we don't just meet in the basement. We're an outreach of that local church, which is kind of different. The churches who for 115 years never chartered a Boy Scout troop, but they're chartering Trail Life troops because, like, okay, I get that.
Yeah.
That can help us. And it grows the local church. 18% of our adult members join the church after they join the troop. So they come in a
Wow.
Trail Life troop, they become part of it, and then they
Yeah.
join that local church. So churches are seeing a lot of growth. And you wouldn't see that in a Boy Scout troop. You may see people show up and they meet at the church, but they don't have any
And
interaction
that's it.
with the church at all.
Hmm.
So it's really a unique approach. Like I said, we got to look at where Boy Scouts went wrong and build ourselves in a way to survive what they fell
I
victim
love
to.
it. No,
Mhm.
it's really good. I get your newsletters, and what I really appreciate is how unapologetic Trail Life is about being Christian and being boys only. Like there is a difference between a boy and a girl. Like it's on so many different levels. So I just really appreciate that boldness because unfortunately we're not seeing that like Christians are feeling that they need to cower or in order to be a nice, kind Christian, you need to just agree with everything. And I don't agree with that. So whenever I see those newsletters and like your stance, I'm like, I love this. I appreciate this. So thank you so much.
And we ain't playing. This is who we are. And we realize that we won't be the most popular. I tell our leaders all the
And
time,
that's okay.
yeah, it's more likely that they will burn you in the public square than build a statue for you there. It just isn't going to happen. You wouldn't think that we would get so much opposition just for caring about boys and
I
for
know.
uplifting biblical values, but it's the right thing, and boys are in desperate need of somebody to stand up for them. Uh, when you see the evidence of that organization for over 100 years supported boys to walk away from boys, it's really tragic, and boys are experiencing that all over the place where they're being discounted in so many ways. But not at TrailLife.
That's right. And you know, I'm a boy mom. Like I said, I have three boys, and I don't think this is bias. I just get so frustrated when I see merchandise that says the future is female. No, it's not. Not just because I have three boys, but because God made X and Y, X and XY,
Yeah,
and the future is male and female, and
it
that's it.
is. It is. Yeah, the future is Jesus.
Right. Thank you so much. So I've asked you a ton of questions, and you've shared your heart. Is there anything else that's on your mind that you're like, you know what, maybe I need to tell people this?
I want to tell you something I'm really excited about. We just
Yeah.
released this book. It's called An Adventurous Guy's Artful Guide to Wisdom. So it's a
Mm.
long title, but it's this really cool book. And what it is, Ro, is, you know, some people have as a habit reading a chapter of Proverbs every day, based on the date. So
Yeah.
today we're recording this on the 23rd, so you would read chapter 23 today. And then after the boys, so what I wanted to do was get the boys in the habit of reading scripture daily. So in
Mm.
boys, risk and competition and uh, autonomy, mastery, purpose, all those things, and this feeds that in a boy. So what a boy does is he reads a chapter for that day, and then he goes to the month, and it's a puzzle. And so if he scans
Mm.
this on that day, on today's date, he scans this. If it's in February, it'll give him a puzzle piece on the phone, and he's got to draw that puzzle piece into the spot on here where it's told. So at the end of the month, he's created this picture, and he doesn't know what it is, but he's got to get his puzzle piece every day. So,
Yeah.
bro, I cannot wait for the first mom to come to me and say, you know, my son could not go to bed last night until he read his Bible. It's okay.
Love
That's
that.
that's a good thing, mom. Okay, let's go. That's
Yeah.
and so the boy, this feeds all the things of boys. He's got to know what this picture is going to be. He can't miss a day because it disappears after that day. And so he
Ah.
has to scan it on the day. But what's beautiful in the kingdom and in the book of wisdom is that there's grace days in there. And so it explains the concept of grace. And on that day, if you missed a day, today's a grace day, and you go and
Mm.
you get the puzzle piece that you missed because we want kids to understand there is such a thing as grace. And so I'm so excited about this as turning boys into daily readers of the Word of God. And so this book lasts a year. So over the course of a year, they will read through Proverbs 12 times, reading a
Yeah.
chapter every day, and they'll have 12 pictures that they drew by hand. They don't know what it is because the pieces come together, and then at the end,
Right.
look at this thing that they created. And I'm just really excited about what that's going to do for boys.
Praise God. Thank you so, so much. All right. So listen, you need to watch this video over and over and over, but here's a quick recap. Academics are actually secondary to character and biblical values. Encourage your children to ask questions, right? Like, especially if you have boys, focus on autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Yeah, I think that I got that right.
Wow.
Secret sauce to read in, incentivize them to read by giving them later bedtime options, and learn more about Trail Life and the amazing work that they're doing. And join us at CHAP June 12th through 14th. I cannot wait to see you there. Mr. Hancock, you have been amazing. Thank you so much for your time, your service, and your commitment to God.
Thank you, Ro. God bless you.
God bless you.